Hello and welcome to our second webinar in our Eco October series. I'd just like to thank our guest speaker, Annie, and our participants for coming along today. This event is being recorded for future reference, and it will be uploaded onto our website for anybody who signed up and couldn't make the webinar. So before I hand over to our guest speaker, I'd just like to provide you with some information in regards to what opportunities Uttlesford has available for our businesses. So this is our economic development team. There's myself, Rachel and Sarah, and we're on hand to provide daily support in regards to business advice and support. We signpost for financial support and any training opportunities that are available. We also advise on grants that our businesses can gain access to. As well as today's webinar, we also have an event tomorrow. It's our Green Young Entrepreneurs and the Great Start scheme. And next week, we have how to reduce your carbon footprint on the 24th, discover a new career in retrofit on the 25th, and practical digital sustainability for SMEs on the 26th. There is still availability for all of these webinars, so if you're interested, then please sign up and come along. As well as the webinars, we're also offering a low carbon workplace grant, which is a match funded grant up to £5,000. It's designed to help our businesses reduce their carbon footprint, and it includes materials and equipment, retrofitting, LED lighting, solar panels, business consultation, and carbon literacy training. These are only some of the items that are included within the grant. And if you go onto our website, you can find out, a more detailed list of what is available, as well as the application form. We're also offering one-on-one consultations. This is a 1-hour consultation that's taken a deeper look into individual cases and identifying problems and solutions. This consultation has proven very popular, and we currently only have 5 spaces left. So I would strongly advise for you to apply for that if you're interested. It also complements the grant very nicely because you get quite a tailored experience. We have business coaching, which is a 6-hour online group session and 2-hour one-on-one private sessions. We only have two availability at the moment for I came with an idea and I left with a business. We are offering 4 grants at the moment. So we have our business startup grant, and that's for £2,500, and that's match funded. That's for our businesses that are for 2 years old or younger. We also have our High Street Premises Enhancement Fund. That's for £5,000 match funded, and that's to enhance the front of your premises. We have our Rural England Prosperity Fund, and we also have our Low Carbon Workplace Grant. On our website, we have a free-to-download startup guide. This provides you with all the information that you need to know in regards to starting up a business. And we've recently updated our website and our business directory. So this is completely free for our businesses to sign up to and join. It's also resident facing. So a lot of our residents have access to this and will be able to see your business and your information. It's also very good to help with our businesses that want to collaborate with each other. And again, we strongly encourage all of our businesses to sign up to this. Lastly, we've got our newsletter that goes out fortnightly, and it's brilliant at keeping all our business up to date and provide you with the latest advice and support that we have available. So if you haven't already done so, again, I would strongly advise you to sign up to that. Okay, and without any further delays, I'd like to hand the floor over to our guest speaker, Annie Soulsby, the Sustainable Life Coach. I'd just like to thank you for coming along, Annie, and for providing us with your knowledge. So thank you.
No worries, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for letting me come along and talk to everybody. Today I am going to be going through how to reduce your plastic use. All my details are on this slide. I will be giving you them again at the end, don't worry. So yeah, next slide please. So just a little bit about myself. I have a long and varied background in environmental science and sustainability. I have an undergraduate degree in environmental science from University of Leeds and a master's in conservation biology from Manchester Metropolitan University. I've also taught fieldwork skills to volunteers, a remote bush camp in the middle of Tanzania. I've created radio and TV programs. I've worked in a corporate marketing department. I've also been a customer service manager. I've set up and run my own not-for-profit organization. I've consulted for the World Bank, and I've also won awards at a climate change competition at MIT University. As a result of all of that, I consolidated all of my knowledge and skills together to create the Sustainable Life Coach. This is where I deliver carbon literacy courses so people understand what climate change is, what they can do, and how to reduce that problem. That is for individuals, for their personal lifestyles, for small businesses, for sole traders, for marketing professionals, also for local government in terms of town and parish councils, and community leaders as well. I also have coaching services which help business overcome their sustainability challenges. That's a one-to-one bespoke service that is designed to help a particular individual business to achieve their goals. In my spare time, I'm eco-renovating my home, so I'm walking the walk as well as talking the talk. I volunteer as a climate champion for my local council up here in Northumberland. I also run my own climate action group as a bunch of volunteers in the local community, doing field trips and community orchards, and hopefully some more projects as we get more established. And just generally try to be environmentally friendly as possible every day. But despite all of this, I'm not an expert on absolutely everything that is climate related or plastic related or indeed sustainability related, because it's just impossible to know everything all the time, and everything's changing so rapidly. So what I do have, though, is a great set of research skills and a really nice connection with lots of other eco experts. So if I don't know the answer myself, I can either find a really good answer for you, or I can pop you along to somebody else who is an expert in that particular field. So I'm really here to educate, motivate, and celebrate all of those different achievements with you. I'm really interested to hear a little bit more about who's on the call today as well. So if you do want to pop your details into the chat about your business and tell me anything that you might be doing to be more sustainable, or any challenges you have, that's really great. And I love hearing all of those different things from all the people on these kind of webinars. So do feel free to pop those details in there, as we'll pick them up as we go through the webinar. So next slide, please. And then this is what we're actually going to be focusing on today. We're going to be looking at plastic and why reducing plastic is a really key point for us to all take on board. Looking at really as well what the motivations are, personal motivations, business motivations for reducing plastic, and discussing where those barriers are to change. Not very many people like change, so we'll be talking about those, but also providing some practical solutions to those barriers. I'll talk a little bit about some action plans that you can pop together, also some innovations that come up, really exciting ways to reduce plastic. I'll talk a little bit about a plastic-free office and a plastic-free home, and then some summary with the key takeaways, and then there's an opportunity to have some question and answer session at the end. If there are any burning questions, do pop them into the chat as we go along today. So first thing first, why should we be reducing our plastic? Don't we need plastic in our lives? Isn't it essential? Well, yes and no. There's a lot of things in life where we do actually need plastic at the moment. There aren't any other solutions, so plastic happens to be the best solution. So in some circumstances, for example, in some medical incidences, we do need to have plastic production. However, we've gone plastic crazy, and it's really taking over the planet. As this chart shows, we're producing over 400 million tons of plastic annually. And more than half of all the plastic that's been produced has been made in the last 15 years. In the UK, most of this is related to packaging. So we toss away around 100 billion pieces of plastic packaging every year. And in 2021 alone, in the UK, we generated 2.5 million metric tons of plastic packaging waste. So it's quite significant, and you can see that increase there, quite a giant leap in the amount of tons of plastic we're producing every year. So reducing plastic use is crucial for a number of reasons. If we can pop to the next slide, please, that would be great. Plastic waste can have a really devastating impact on our environment, from polluting waterways to harming marine life. As this slide is showing about where and how plastic enters the world's ocean, reducing plastic can help to limit the amount of plastic that ends up in the environment and reduces the damage that plastic can cause. Fortunately, around 1.1 million animals die each year due to plastic. And this is mainly from discarded plastics, but also can occur when plastic is being manufactured and small particles enter the water systems. And news just in, the EU is actually looking to tackle those very small parts of plastic in that manufacturing process. So there will be some changes coming along in the EU related to that. But there is an estimated 75 to 199 million tons of plastic waste currently in our oceans, with a further 33 billion pounds of plastic entering the marine environment every single year. And unfortunately, plastic never goes away. So plastic isn't a material that decomposes. It's not like organic waste. Instead, plastic just tends to get into smaller and smaller pieces, and it breaks down into so small pieces that you can't even see them. And these are known as microplastics, or even smaller, nanoplastics. And these pieces are any type of plastic that's less than 5 millimeters in length. And 80% of all microplastic pollution is derived from textiles, tires, and city dust. But you can find them in everyday examples such as cosmetics, tea bags, and a lot of synthetic clothes. And if we're looking at the figures there, there's more than 5.25 trillion microplastic in the ocean. So those pieces are everywhere. And that equates to 46,000 pieces per every square mile of ocean. And every single molecule of plastic produced since 1907 is still around. So every single bit is still here. And on top of that, plastic can contain chemicals that can be harmful to human health, especially when it contaminates our environment. So by reducing plastic use, we can help reduce our exposure to these chemicals and protect our health. We also have a problem when those microplastics in the ocean is eaten by seafood. Then we eat that seafood. So we're consuming microplastics as a byproduct. So we eat around 70,000 pieces of microplastics every year. And unfortunately, it's been found in our human bloodstream and also in fetuses. And we don't actually know what the effect of microplastics is on our health at the moment. So we're not quite sure what the implications are. However, a recent study observed that small plastics caused metabolism and behavioral abnormalities in zebrafish embryos. So that is demonstrating that plastic is disrupting our ecosystems, and then there potentially could be a problem with our own health as well. So something to consider there. We can move to the next slide, please. And then even more bad news, unfortunately, plastic is produced by extracting and refining fossil fuels, and around 4% of the world's annual petroleum production is diverted to make plastic, and another 4% is burned in the refining process. So the production of plastic produces carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, and then there's the carbon and other greenhouse gases that's produced when we transport that plastic as well. And when plastic is incinerated, which is a lot of how plastic waste is dealt with, then that adds even more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And then on top of that, when plastic breaks down in the ocean, it also releases methane and ethylene, another 2 greenhouse gases. So these are all gases that contribute to climate change, and it's also not great for the air that we breathe as well. So plastic contributes to climate change. And then if we're looking at the way that we can solve these problems, not all plastic is recyclable. If you look at the types of plastic, then you can see they're often classified into 7 different types according to their ability to be recycled. And the only widely recycled plastic is PET. So that's why you often see plastic bottles being recycled. And there usually are 3 plastics that are also possible to recycle, but you will have to check to see if your local authority can do that or not. And then there are 3 types that really can't be recycled. So we also have to bear in mind that plastic can only be effectively recycled once, unlike materials like glass or metal that can be endlessly recycled. There's only a certain amount of things that this plastic can be recycled into, so there's not a very large market for that as well. So recycling plastic is very difficult and also not very practical. And even when we're thinking about that as well, not all plastic is even recycled. Even if it can be recycled, not a lot of it is. So out of the 8.3 billion tons of virgin plastic produced worldwide, only 9% has been recycled. And do we actually know if it's even being recycled properly? Sometimes this recycling means that it's just shipped to another country and then burned in open fires. A lot of that involves sorting, mainly by women and people in poorly paid, low-income jobs. Now, countries such as China are pushing back on this process and rejecting taking this plastic waste and saying that they're not actually going to process that anymore. So then again, it gets shipped to perhaps another country that has even worse practices when it comes to recycling. So if we think about it, of all the plastic that's been produced, 91% has never been recycled. So it's not going great for our little plastic journey here. So the real key idea is to reduce plastic first. That's the most important step towards creating a more sustainable and healthy planet, not only for ourselves, but also for the future generations. And as you can see here, we're just talking about the plastic waste by disposal method. Most of it is landfilled. Then again, we've got the mismanaged section. We've got some that's incinerated, and we can barely see the amount that's recycled there. You know, it's not a great solution for plastic. If we can pop to the next slide, please. And I'm sure that we've seen images like this before when we've had a look at various different impacts, or some documentaries have shown us that some places can end up like this. This once was a beautiful beach, and now it's just completely full of plastic. And you know, this is why our oceans are full of this stuff. If we move on to the next slide as well. So ironically, plastic was first invented by a guy called Alexander Parkes in 1855 in Hackney in London, and it was called Parkezine. And his invention was to try and create something that would replace all of the wildlife products that were being used to create buttons and other fastenings for clothing. So his Parkezine plastic product replaced the need to use, for example, turtle shells to create those buttons and fastenings. So in one way, initially, plastic did start saving turtles from going extinct by replacing that wildlife trade and desecration. But as you can see, wildlife now is being harmed by that plastic. Here's a turtle that's eating a plastic bag because it looks like a jellyfish, which is the normal diet for that species. So you often find lots of animals have consumed plastic when they haven't identified it as something different, because it looks just like what they normally would eat. If you move to the next slide, please, we can also see that not only does it affect internally, but it can also affect externally as well. So birds and other animals can get trapped in plastic waste and are killed as a result. So it is really important for lots of different reasons. So if we move to the next slide, please. If you can pop into the chat if any of those facts surprise you. You know, I've just got a summary here just to kind of put the main points in place. It's a way to think about how that might inspire us to make some changes. If you've got any thoughts, do pop them into the chat there. You know, there's lots of different drivers into why we want to reduce our plastic, but just thinking about how much of it is out there is quite mind-blowing. And also how difficult it is to process as well. It's quite challenging. If we move on to the next slide, please. There is some other incentives as well why we need to think about reducing our plastic, because it's a good idea to stay ahead and also comply with any legal requirements. And plastic pollution is a global problem, as I've just mentioned, and it also needs a global solution. So in 2022, 175 nations agreed to develop a legally binding agreement on plastic pollution. So negotiations for this global plastics treaty have already started, and there is a goal of completing that process by the end of next year. And this treaty has a huge potential to put the world on a path towards a plastic-free future, but it will be up to us as individuals, businesses, and the nations to make sure that it delivers on the promises. And there's some things been happening closer to home as well. The UK government has implemented a ban on the supply of single-use plastic straws, stirrers, and cotton buds since October 2020. And then earlier this month, from the 1st this year, shops, takeaways, food vendors, and other hospitality businesses are no longer able to sell single-use plastic, cutlery, and balloon sticks, or those polystyrene cups or food containers. So we're gradually moving into a world where we're reducing those from a legal perspective as well. And also, you probably will have heard about the plastic bag charge that's been in place since 2015, and that's for large retailers in the UK, in England, to charge customers for single-use plastic bags. And there's a minimum charge associated with that. It's currently 10 pence in Scotland, 5p in Wales, and 25 pence in Northern Ireland, and 10p in England. This has actually worked. It's reduced the amount of plastic bag consumption in the UK significantly, although I was just speaking to somebody the other day and they seem to have more bags for life rather than the regular plastic bag. So it does require some behavior change and keeping them in your car or taking them out with you when you go around. So it's no good swapping one for the other. We do actually need to think about reducing the overall. And then from a business point of view, there's also some other legal thoughts to be had. And from April 22, the plastic packaging tax has been applied to plastic packaging that does not contain at least 30% recycled content. You will need to pay the tax if you have manufactured or imported plastic packaging components which contain less than 30% recycled plastic, and that's charged at around £210 per tonne from April this year, and that's designed to encourage the use of recycled materials in packaging rather than virgin packaging, and to discuss excessive plastic use. So that's another incentive to try and reduce your plastic waste. Again, we're looking also at another scheme. This is called the UK's Extended Producer Responsibility Regime, and that's been introduced in phases. Once that's fully enforced, packaging producers, which will include downstream operators, importers, brand owners, and distributors, they'll be required to collect and report packaging data and contribute to the collection, treatment, recycling, and disposing of packaging waste. So we're getting away from all of this responsibility to do with the plastic problem being on the end of the chain, so usually down to the local council or other waste disposal companies, and actually shifting the responsibility back onto producers to say that they need to be responsible for actually generating that waste in the first place. I do suggest that you go to the gov.uk website for more information as those things develop and change. It's always a great idea to keep on top of that, so you don't get caught out with all of these new legal requirements coming in, and stay ahead of the curve. You may also have heard about in Scotland that they're looking at rolling out a deposit return scheme for drinks packaging. That was initially expected to be in place by July last year, but it's been postponed twice, and it may come into force next year in March. So that's when a consumer buys a drink packaged in a single-use container made from that PET plastic that I mentioned before, the one that's easily recyclable, or glass, or steel, or aluminium. And they will pay a 20p deposit, which then could be redeemed on returning that empty packaging. So hopefully that will also reduce a bit of the littering problem that we see out and about in the countryside. Keep an eye out if this is going to be introduced also into England or Wales. So those are just some of the legal requirements that you'll need to be aware of. If you've heard of any of those, do pop that into the chat. And if any of those are affecting you, or you think that they may affect you, do also let me know. There are going to be more and more shifts in this direction coming up, especially with that global treaty coming into place. So do keep your eye up on that. So when we're thinking about all of this, how does that make you feel? We're thinking about the environmental impact. We're thinking about the fact that plastic never goes away. We're thinking about how those microplastics affect us and our health, and that not all plastic is recyclable or is even recycled. It contributes to climate change, and also legally, we're all going to be affected by that in terms of how our business moves forward. So lots of food for thought. So if we move on, yeah. So we're going to look now at why do you want to reduce your plastic use? And just mention some things that might be motivating you and your business to go plastic free. But there's also some other ideas out there as well. So reducing plastic use enhances your company's image and makes people understand that you're being more environmentally conscious and socially responsible. But be careful of how you go around that. I've got a really good example here. So there was an Australian shampoo company who had their shampoos and conditioners in plastic bottles that were actually easily recyclable in that PET I mentioned before. Then they had a huge ad campaign about how they said they were going to make those plastic bottles refillable by allowing customers to buy the product in pouches. Now, these pouches were not recyclable. So their idea of saying we're going to move to refills, but then making those refills in packages that weren't actually very easily recyclable, meant that a lot of negative feedback happened in their Instagram and Twitter feeds. So there's a good idea to make sure you fully thought through your plastic reduction use, test it out with some customers, and think about how you could make that something that's practical and easily recyclable, rather than falling into that trap there. Reducing your plastic use can also reduce costs. Disposing of plastic waste, as we mentioned before, can cost money. It also might cost you if the legal size changes, and it might cost you by customers thinking that there's too much plastic in your product and choosing something else. So thinking about it is it's a good way to save money. And as I say, it also means that you're anticipating and adhering to any of those environmental regulations and policies that are coming along the line. And customers really expect and are starting to demand that businesses are actually prioritizing sustainable practices. So more and more consumers are wanting businesses to take the lead on that. And that also applies to your employees as well. They're increasingly attracted to environmentally conscious workplaces. A commitment to reducing your plastic can enhance employee engagement and also productivity, and that will also directly impact operational costs. I know that there's definitely graduates now that are coming out of university that will not work for companies that are not environmentally conscious. So if you're thinking about hiring people, it might make it more difficult if you're not looking at this as a way to improve your business. And also thinking about resource efficiency as well. If you embrace a circular economy, which is using the waste and not actually creating waste at the end, and using recycled materials, that can also result in cost savings compared to sourcing new materials. You might find that there's a local company that actually has a waste material that you could use instead of plastic. And there's also opportunities to think of new ways to do that. Recycling programs can also generate revenue through the sales of recycled materials. So, for example, if you're a coffee shop, then you can sell coffee grounds, and that will be made into beauty products. So there's a way of thinking about generating revenue from recycling programs. If you want to pop into the chat why you would like to reduce your plastic use, I'm always interested to hear about that. So, where is the plastic in your business? Have you started to think about where it might be that you want to look at reducing your plastic? A lot of the time, that is in products. I mean, especially if you're Mattel and you've got Barbie, that might be a bit of a challenge, plastic product out there. It might be in the equipment that you're using. A lot of the time, at the moment, businesses are looking at the packaging. Packaging is a great way to start because that's a really good, there's lots of really good alternatives out there in the market. Also, that we use plastics when we have events. We have plastic in our offices. There's plastic if we have canteens or kitchens. And also you might find that when you want to deal with your plastic, you will have to look at suppliers. And that could even just be the cleaning crew that comes round to your offices or premises. And then also employees might bring plastic into your organization too, or it might be related to their job role. And, a lot of the time humans, we don't like changing. So there are some barriers to changing, and there's some common barriers that are faced by businesses when they're looking at reducing their plastic. One of the most common ones is about cost. And that is there's a perceived perception about how high cost is associated with transitioning to a sustainable alternative. And that includes the cost of sourcing the eco-friendly materials, maybe reconfiguring packaging processes, and there's lots of potential impacts on the production budget. Sometimes businesses encounter difficulties in identifying and talking to different types of suppliers that offer the sustainable and plastic-free alternatives. Sometimes the supply chain could be quite long and complex, so it can make it quite difficult to trace the origin of materials and make sure that it meet environmental standards, especially if they come from a different country. And balancing that desire to reduce plastic with customer expectations and preferences can be tricky. Some businesses might fear that customers want to resist the changes in packaging or associate it with being inconvenient. So again, they don't want to change because they think that their customers will not be receptive to that. As mentioned before, a problem with recycling, there isn't always a waste management infrastructure in place, so businesses might struggle to find practical ways to dispose or recycle plastic alternatives. I know that a lot of the time there are packaging that says that it's compostable or biodegradable, but actually that's only applicable in industrial composters. So again, it's about making sure that there's those facilities available for consumers or other businesses to actually process those alternative packaging options to avoid plant-based packaging ending up in landfill or in recycling markets. And sometimes it's really difficult to find an alternative that matches the plastic. For example, if we're looking at things that are durable or you need to ensure something has a shelf life, traditional plastic is the go-to, and there could be some hurdles in getting over that in terms of foodstuffs or medicines that might need to have certain types of packaging in order for that to be sold. And then you might find that there'd be employees that are resistant to change as well. That's just, again, a normal human reaction. If you've had any of those barriers and you want to share them in the chat, do pop them in there too. So how do we, overcome those barriers? There's always solutions. This is what I like doing. So in terms of, thinking about how do we provide an alternative, we're looking about shifting the mindset and thinking about how So there may be some immediate costs, but it will result in long-term savings. A lot of the time when we're talking about sustainability, it's about making things more efficient and reducing operational costs over time. And again, as I mentioned, switching to zero plastic can attract new customers, and the new customers are usually willing to pay more for sustainable products. So you're talking about increasing your value there. And also you can think about bulk buying, which obviously reduces the unit price down. Think about collaborating with your suppliers, working with them, collaborating to identify and integrate sustainable alternatives. Think about sharing some sustainability goals with your suppliers, making a commitment to reducing plastic use together. If you're not able to collaborate with your existing suppliers, then seek out others that may be more transparent and have other eco-friendly sourcing practices. Communicate with your suppliers, make sure that they're aligning to your plastic reduction objectives, and consider local suppliers so you don't have that complexity of a long supply chain and finding it difficult to work out where all this is coming from. And it also supports, local and regional sustainability initiatives. When you're talking with your customers, make sure it's really clear what you're telling them. Give them the reasons why you're reducing plastic. Highlight all those positive impacts that you've already learned today, and involve your customers in the journey towards sustainability, saying that this is the right thing to do for the right reasons. Talk to them about the benefits of the sustainable packaging, make sure that they fully understand the journey that you're going on and take them with you. Think about how you can implement those changes gradually. That means that customers are not overwhelmed and they can adapt along the way as well. So small changes over time is a good idea. You might also think about engaging with industry associations and advocacy groups to contribute to the development of environmentally friendly regulations and standards, as well as also connecting with waste management locally to see if you can collaborate with local authorities and industry groups to enhance the recycling capabilities for the new types of packaging that are coming along. Also, it's a good idea to think about researching and developing an investment in that area of your business can help you discover new alternatives. Sustainable materials, maybe something that's also got a better shelf life if you've got those foodstuff or medicine products that you need to have that particular type of packaging for. So, coming up with new ideas is a really good way to sort of innovate and provide a useful solution. Provide training for your employees about the environmental impact of plastic. Show them this webinar, have a little bit of a workshop, get their thoughts and feelings about plastic in their company, and give them an opportunity to provide some ideas as well. Employee engagement is a great way to find solutions. Encourage a sense of pride and ownership in contributing to your sustainability goals. You might even offer some incentives or recognition for participating in those projects. This really helps develop a sort of low plastic workplace culture that's really engaged in helping you get to those low plastic goals. And you can provide them all sorts of online resources and continually involve them in the results and the impact of their collective efforts. There's also an opportunity to adjust some of the practices that you have within your business that will make sure that you're complying with legislation and that you've got a commitment to following those new legal requirements coming along and also in the future. So implementing all of those different types of solutions can seem quite overwhelming, but there's lots of different options there to make sure that you're developing a plan. And this is where we get to this bit, actually putting all of that into an easy to follow process. The first thing to do is to have a look and see what's going on in your business. Start with an assessment. Look at an audit to see where the plastic is and identify areas of plastic use. Once you've done that, you can set some goals. Once you've quantified where your plastic is, think about some realistic reduction targets and set them against a timeline. Think about some short-term wins and maybe some long-term objectives in there as well. Make sure those goals are aligned with your corporate values and objectives, and also those regulatory requirements. It's a good idea at this point to think about creating a plastic policy for your business. And as I mentioned before about investment in research and development, you may want to consider thinking about redesigning or rethinking your product to take advantage of a plastic-free policy. Also look at a cost-benefit analysis, looking at the long-term savings. There may be some government grants or incentives that are out there that will help you along the way. Think about streamlining your supply chain. As I mentioned before, collaboration is key. If you can research and identify local suppliers that are committed to eco-friendly practices, that's a really good starting point. And keep tracking those suppliers as well to make sure there's transparency in your supply chain. And then develop a communication strategy. This is about talking to your customers, highlight the positive impacts of plastic reduction. You could think about something like a loyalty program or discount for customers that are supporting your sustainable practices. And then have those conversations with the local management infrastructure for waste. Start collaborating with your council and waste management companies, and also broader industry groups to help support waste reduction initiatives across the whole of the UK. And as I mentioned, we can get your employees involved, get them on those training schemes, create those incentives and recognition programs for them, foster that sense of sustainability and plastic reduction through communication and employment engagement activities. And as I mentioned before, involve them in creating this plan, ask them for input and feedback. Make sure there's lots of continuous education for them. Make sure that that's regular workshops for them and also for your stakeholders. Provide online resources such as training materials or sustainability portals, and share the success stories that you're having as well in reducing plastic. You may also want to ensure that there's a compliance team that is monitoring the developments, as I say, with things like the Global Plastic Treaty. So make sure that everything is lining up with them, so that you're staying ahead of any regulatory changes. And all of this requires a little bit of monitoring and evaluation, so that you can, adjust things along the way, get that feedback, make sure that you're always listening to every part of the business and adjust the plan based on those lessons learned and ongoing challenges and changing circumstances. I'm just going to give you a little bit of an example here. So this is a packaging alternative that has come from Alpro. They created edible packaging for fried chicken buckets. So this is not real chicken, this is crispy mushroom nuggets, and they're served with sweet potato fries and a creamy garlic dip. However, the bucket that you would normally find those kind of products in from a fast food place is completely edible. It's made from a combination of fennel seeds, nigella seeds, sesame seeds, and pumpkin seeds. And it's supposed to taste a little bit like a crisp bread. So I haven't tasted it myself, but it's definitely a good idea for something to be edible as opposed to throwing it away. And that's making Alpro stand out from the crowd, making it a novel, innovative and useful product instead. So maybe there's something like that that you could do to make your business stand out from the crowd too. I think it's quite exciting. I'm just going to give you a little bit of an example here of how you might tackle some of this. So usually we have an office as part of a business. Again, think about doing an audit, take a note of some of the plastic use, single-use plastics that you've got in your office and identify where you can make changes. But don't throw things away just because it's plastic. Think about how that's already been made. And so then the most sustainable option is to continue using that plastic until it kind of dies. So don't think about chucking it all away just because you've got a new low plastic use policy. And develop that policy for your organization. Make sure all purchase requests are checked against the policy to show all the new items that you're buying are plastic free. And a lot of the time in an office, we may have a kitchen, but that's where lots of changes could be made. swap out plastic food storage containers for reusable glass or stainless steel alternatives when they come to the end of their lives. You know, rather than buy new plastic wrap, use beeswax wraps or reusable silicone covers. You know, that replace once the plastic cutlery is being used up, you know, replace that with reusable cutlery. And eliminating plastic in the kitchen can significantly reduce your footprint. Encourage employees to bring their own lunch to work rather than to buy single-use plastic products for their lunches. Or things that are in minimum or plastic-free packaging, like we could all go back to our brown paper bags. Bring in reusable bags and avoid using plastic bags for bringing stuff into the office, and support brands that provide plastic-free packaging as well. And as I mentioned before, you could talk to your cleaning crew about making sure that they become low plastic as well, swapping out plastic bottles for eco-friendly alternatives once they're finished using them, or finding refillable options instead. You could have a corporate plastic-free day. That's quite an exciting option to raise awareness about environmental impact of plastic, educate employees, and encouraging them to share ideas and swap tips and hints about how they've managed to reduce their plastic use. It's a really nice activity and something that you can do in the office. If you want to take the team out and about, there's lots of beach cleanups, river restorations, litter picks, all those things that can demonstrate the importance of protecting our ecosystems from plastic pollutions. And don't forget about business lunches on corporate events as well. So make sure that that goes out to your suppliers for those too. So we're nearly there, guys. A lot of the time we also want to make sure that we're reducing our plastic at home, and therefore if we pop to the next slide, there's just a few things that we can do there as well. Think about, as I say, reducing first. Every time you go out, look at what you're purchasing. Is it full of plastic? Is there an alternative? That's the easiest, best way to get going. We've talked about reusable bags. Make sure you take them to the shop for your grocery and for any shopping. Go to your refill store, thinking about using them instead of buying new plastic products all the time. Say no to plastic straws, cutlery and cups if you can. Use reusable or biodegradable alternatives. There's lots of different options out there that you can use, especially choosing clothing that are made from natural fibers rather than synthetic fibers. That reduces all those microplastics that were mentioned earlier about going into the ocean. So just pick one area of your home to start with. That could be the bathroom, the kitchen, or it could be your wardrobe, and think about how you can start managing that to make it as low plastic as possible. Recycle as much as you can, even though it's difficult to do so. Learn how to, you know, recycle certain types of plastics along with what's available in your area. And, you know, start talking to other people as well. You find that there's lots of tips and hints you can get, and you can share with other people your plastic journey. I do recommend this book. I picked this up in my local charity shop recently, and this is by Lucy Siegel. It's called Turning the Tide on Plastic. Lots of information and a little plan in there about how you can do that at home. So pick that up. It was £3.50 in my charity shop, so that's a bargain as well too. So in terms of what we've talked about today, you know, plastic never really goes away. It just gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and it pollutes everywhere, in our oceans, in our bloodstreams, in our environment. It's not a great thing. And unfortunately, recycling is not the answer. Very little of it is actually recycled. It's very difficult to recycle. You can't recycle it multiple times. So recycling is not the great answer for plastics. Find in yourselves what you're motivated to do. Your personal motivation is a great way of helping you to achieve your goal with plastic use, especially when you're thinking about it from your business perspective. That would be about increasing your sales, reducing your costs, and making sure you've got some exciting new products to bring to market. Think about the barriers and solutions that I mentioned, lots of options out there. And then start by creating your goals, conducting an audit, and starting on that plan. And then it's about putting your plan into action and thinking about not only reducing your plastic at work, but also how you can do that at home. So if there's any questions coming through from today. I know that was quite a lot, but I do like to make sure I get as much value for you as you can out of 50 minutes there. If you want to, I think last time Rachel invited people to come off mute if they wanted to, or if they want to pop into the chat as well.
No, I don't think anybody.
Must have covered everything.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, if anybody has any questions or any queries, you know, if they'd like to, you know, email, you know, the economic development team or Annie, you know, then, you know, any questions, any information, we can pass that on and we can answer that for you. So lovely. So that's brilliant. So thank you, Annie. I'd really like to, you know, thank you for that. I think there's a lot to take away there. I think there's a lot of great information. I think it was brilliant. Thank you very much.
No worries. I mean, one of the things is at the end of the day, you know, people don't have to do things on their own. If they are struggling, if they do want to ask me a question, they can just send me an email at annie@thesustainablelifecoach.com, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. It is a journey. Unfortunately, a lot of people are not quite on that journey yet, but as I mentioned, there's a lot of incentives coming along from legal perspective, but also driven by customers. So there are some innovative businesses that are taking the leap, and I would encourage you guys to stay ahead of the curve and get those customers before somebody else does, and think about how you can reduce your plastic at home as well. So yeah, it's every day is an opportunity, isn't it? So but thank you guys for coming along today.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Thank you very much.
No worries.
Take care
See you
then.
later.
Bye.
Bye.